Hello there, folks. Kevin here on your March 20th, Friday, just after the close of markets. Thought I'd give you a quick YouTube update. Everybody's out at spray season. Everybody's moving. Not everybody. Some areas are far ahead of others. Some areas, Northern Plains guys, probably still dealing with some winter problems. So it just kind of varies where you're at. But I thought I'd shoot you a YouTube instead of just a long written report because enough of you are sitting in spray rigs. You'd probably rather listen to something than stop and read something for 10 minutes. However, I'm still going to type the report as well. I'll try to get through some of that this afternoon and the rest of it in the morning. Things are changing day by day, so it's old news is old news in 5 minutes sometimes. So you just have to bear with us on that. Where do I start? We got a lot to process here. So in my morning text, I'll clear that up first. My morning text, I mentioned that for every month that fertilizer production is offline in the Gulf, or in the Middle East Gulf, that equates to around enough fertilizer to produce, to go on, or to treat 6.8 million acres. So for every month this goes on, that's another 6.8 million acres of fertilizer that's not available. And we've already done some permanent damage. I was quite kind of, I hate to use the word shocked. I wasn't shocked. I mean, but I was surprised that the price action today was so weak given what has happened in the last 2 days. Now, there's some difficulty finding what is true and what is not true. It's very difficult getting information. You're not going to get any of the right information from the network news. You're not going to get anything there. You've got to go deeper than that. And so it comes down to who knows what and where they are and if they're a reputable source. And so you got to do a lot of checking to try and nail that down. But from what it sounds like, there was enough damage. I think it's pronounced gutter, spelled Qatar, pronounced gutter, I think. There's been enough damage there to their natural gas fields from Iran, and then Israel took out a decent-sized portion of Iran's oil infrastructure, that we've already got some fairly permanent damage there that, according to some, would be 5 to 10 years before some of that stuff can get rebuilt and put back online. So it's not like you can turn the key tomorrow and say we'll be back at full fertilizer production. We will not be. But if the war does end over the weekend, then you're looking at about a 7 million acres worth of fertilizer that is not going to be in the pipeline. I don't think that equates to higher prices short term, but somewhat, we can survive that. All right, they're gonna have to pay up, but most things will be able to get fertilized. Now, if we fast forward 2 weeks and we manage to, or we manage to hit a higher percentage of those infrastructure, well, then we've got a problem. And why this is so important is we already know the energy aspect of it. We know what happens to oil, and we know what happens to freight. What happens to everything on the planet is based on oil, and that the ripple effect from that. The world is just now starting to understand that the fertilizer setup, and while we have oil reserves, we don't have fertilizer reserves. A lot of the product that comes into the Gulf of the U.S., the New Orleans area, and gets shipped through the country, arrives in April and May. And so that stuff's supposed to be getting shipped now. Well, that's currently not getting shipped. So this becomes a problem. And you say, and the U.S. says, well, we're gonna make sure that strait gets opened up and get stuff moving now. We don't want the infrastructure. Trump already came out against Israel and condemned them for the last attack and says we got to protect infrastructure. There's the problem with that. And we'll go off to the weeds. You can correct me where I'm wrong. Not if I'm wrong, but where I'm wrong. But we're in sort of a... this is where you get into that... some of that Muslim eschatology, to where they believe that the West, a Western leader, would come in and start such a conflict, bringing in their end times. But their end times is far different than like a Christian end times. Their end times, it's more of a call to fight and destroy everything, which explains partly, which I think explains partly why they're attacking the Saudis, why they're attacking, Qatar. That to me lines up. So if that's the case, if that is truly the case, and I might be off base on this, then Iran's not going to stop. They're going to keep fighting on this so I don't know if there is a peaceful resolution in the very short term here. This could drag on a little bit. So we got to watch that. I don't know the answer. There may be peace by Monday. There may be, more big time damage by Monday. I don't know. But we certainly got to pay attention, because man, if they decide to hit some more of that natural gas plant outside of that's in gosh, I just have a hard time pronouncing the place, Gutter, but I guess that's what the experts call it. So if they hit that natural gas plant more, we're going to have, you're going to have an absolute food crisis. And if you're a grain producer and you have a food crisis, well, that's obviously going to benefit our position in a great way. But as a population, boy, that's going to leave a mark. Probably lead to some pretty serious stuff. So we got to watch that. And there's another part of the angle that's going on this week that's just amazing to me, that we were down so hard, Monday, especially Monday and Friday had big down days in the wheat market and in the corn market, is you had a freeze. And I missed this. I try to keep track of the weather best I can, and I don't know how this went under my radar, but I had no idea. I knew they were going to get cold, but it was March. I wasn't real worried about it. I say it's March. You're not going to do a lot of damage in March. And boy, was that wrong. It got way colder than I expected. And we were talking temperatures. North Texas had a low around 9. Keep in mind, these guys harvest in May, mid to late May. And I'll send a chart in my written report that Kansas State put out. It shows you how many hours the temperature was below 12 degrees. And there's, that whole southwest wheat belt in Kansas had about 6 hours below 12 degrees. We start getting worried when it's joining if it's below 32 degrees. There could be damage at 28. If it stays below 28 for a couple hours, we get nervous. It was below 12 for 5 to 6 hours in a very large percentage of this area. I'm seeing pictures already from Missouri. I'm seeing pictures from South Dakota and Nebraska of hard red winter wheat that it looks absolutely terrible. And it's got a sick brown color to it. Man, not something that, from talking to producers there, it sounds like rain at this point. If they're to get rain, that tells them to put in a summer crop. They're going to put milo in. depending on where they're at. There'll be some other options, but it's not, hey, look, the wheat crop's saved. It's, hey, look, I've got moisture to plant something else. And, you know, if it doesn't rain, then they're just planning on, it's an insurance game for them and whatever. And most, shouldn't say most, many producers in the area have basically said, heck with it. It's, call it another year where we're not going to have wheat. And one of my clients who has since moved on, or I don't know, he's been gone for a while, but older gentleman, you know, probably 10 years ago, we would chat, and he said, you know, down in this country, he was in Southwest, he was kind of South Central Kansas. He would say, you know, Kevin, there's wheat years and there's non-wheat years, and you get a wheat year and it looks good, starts good, and it's a wheat year, and then you get those spring rains right on time. So then you have years that aren't wheat years, and it just doesn't matter. It's just not going to be a good year, and you know that, and the crop will look bad the whole way through. And anyway, the way this is looking up, it is not a wheat year. So I'm sure the Southern Plains guys are well aware. So they've already made some adjustments to that. So some mental adjustments, I should say. But anyway, to me, it's we're right on the brink of some pretty major stuff, and we'll see. This weekend's a big weekend of what could potentially happen. You know, the last 7 weeks, speaking technically, the last 7 weeks have started out with a Monday crash, a Tuesday somewhat crash in futures markets, and then we rally Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You look back on a chart, the last 7 weeks have had that exact pattern. This week changed that pattern. This week had a crash on Monday, right on schedule. Tuesday, right on schedule. Wednesday, bounced right on schedule. Thursday, a tiny bounce. Today was the day that we thought, okay, here comes new highs. And instead, we're down double digits. Down pretty hard in Kansas City, despite the freeze. And the chart world looks, we've made a big wedge. I hate wedges. In my opinion, they don't usually dictate which direction we're going. They just dictate we're going to go a long way. And whatever way that thing bounces out of there, whether it fails or whether it succeeds, it's going to move quite a distance. And so common sense says with the freeze, with the war, with the fertilizer, with the outside money coming in, it would suggest this thing's getting ready to go up. And on the other side, you've got defense mechanisms. You've got the government in the way, trying to prevent any high price of anything, admitting they're selling futures contracts and wanting to sell futures contracts in the oil industry, which I'm sure bleeds off to everything else that the consumers use, like grain. You've got some outside forces that are trying to kick the thing down. So we'll see where this wedge goes, and I'm going to make decisions based on, you know, the only big stressor I feel is the old crop wheat remaining, and that is going to be determined kind of by this chart. If that thing fails and we break out to the downside, it's going to time me out, and I'm just not going to deal with it. I hate to do that. Portland's been playing games with us, you know, for a while now, that they've dropped down to just 4 entities. They're getting away with murder in there, basically. Price murder, and I hate to bail them out. I don't want to bail them out, but if the chart's not going to play ball, it's not going to put the pressure on them, and they can time us out. They can take us to June, you know, barring all other news stays constant, which it won't, and then force us to have to liquidate. But if the thing comes out to the upside, they're going to have to face pressure. Some of the cheapest wheat in the world, and they're going to have to start bidding it up to reality at some point. And that's kind of what we're waiting for there. So that's about all I got. Weather, as you know, has been weird. You have the Southern Plains. I mean, they're in the middle of that heat ridge now. Pacific Northwest is dealing with the end of that heat ridge. Doesn't seem right. I'm out here in March. I'm in a t-shirt. should be 38 degrees with a 38-mile-an-hour wind. Instead, it's 80 degrees and hot, and I don't like it. It's going to turn into fire season in a month if we keep this up. So, we'll see. Well, that's all I got. It's a big weekend, and we'll see what happens Monday, and I'll get that written report done here in the next 24 hours. Thanks.